I'd like to welcome everybody today. We're recording this on the occasion of the exhibition Q.E.D, which is the 2021 graduate artists of the MFA and NCAD, the National College of Art and Design. And we are extremely happy to welcome Sara Greavu, Curator of Visual Arts of Project Art Centre in Dublin. So what I'd like to say is that Q.E.D runs at NCAD Gallery from Friday the 11th of March until March 25th. So everybody's welcome to come into the gallery physically at 4 p.m. on Friday. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Sara.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for the invitation to be here and to respond to your work. And huge congratulations to you all on your work individually, on your practice, and on working together to present this exhibition. I feel like we're continuing in these kind of like unprecedented times when even as we open up, it's just like a more complex proposition, like putting on a exhibition in real time and real space and bringing people in to see your work. For me, it's been a kind of a, even as we're opening fully up, it's been a kind of a juddering, like stop start, or things go wrong, or somebody gets COVID, or and it's very unsettling. So extra, I guess, congratulations, as we try to find like structure and meaning and understand how work can be shared and received. I just feel like a lot of the certainties around that have been called into question. And that's an opportunity to reconsider ideas around audiences and the circulation of work and the encounter with the artwork and what that can look and feel like, but it's also challenging. So just I want to recognize that and recognize that you have done this in difficult times as well. So just as we start to launch into the presentations, I have a couple of general questions that I hope that we can reflect on together. And I'll lead you into these questions if they're not addressed in your presentation. So don't worry about it if you haven't spoken to them. I guess that the work is not just what we see in the gallery. It's also about the relational side of that. It's about how you work and interact with people, and about the process that you undertake that leads you to what we see here. So maybe one of the things you can reflect on is what feeds your practice. If you can maybe identify some of the sources that you draw from, and that might be reading theory, it might be a daily drawing practice, it might be film, or something that you watch on Netflix. It could be anything, but just maybe reflect a little bit on that. I guess knowing about this is one of the things that gives people an entry point into your work, but it's also something that's good, I guess, for all of us. When you can identify that, it makes your practice more sustainable. You know where you need to go to get fed for your practice. And then maybe at the other end of that question is about where the work goes, who does your work feed, maybe, or an idea about the circulation of the work. And in a way, this is a question about audiences and who your audience is. And maybe it's a difficult question at the moment as well. And sometimes it feels like it's outside of your control when methods of showing work have changed so much. And then galleries have their own ways of making contact with audiences. That's feels like sometimes a separate task from what you're doing, but maybe just reflect a little bit on who you want to reach. I've been thinking a lot about time and relational time and cyclical time that is formed in conjunction with others. And this maybe relates to the process of working together to form an exhibition, but also to these questions about audience and circulation, and hopefully how something is cycling back or circulating back to you in this process from that point of feeding your work and then sending it out, and just how that forms a kind of a loop that sustains you. Yeah, maybe that's all. I'll leave it there, and maybe we can kind of launch into the presentations. But Louis, I think you're first up, but maybe you wouldn't mind speaking to the title of the exhibition as well and just explaining a bit about that.
Sure, yeah. So Q.E.D is a Latin abbreviation, and for anybody who saw our reading in Latin on St. John's Eve as the opening ceremony for the IMA showcase last year will know my Latin pronunciation is dreadful, but Q.E.D is Quod Erat Demonstrandum, and it's basically this term that appears generally after these kind of mathematical theorems and problems, and it's you know, an indication that something has been proven beyond doubt or proven beyond argument. And I guess it was just something that we were talking about as a group who have, you know, we've kind of collectively been through this kind of 2-year pandemic under the umbrella of education, and we kind of we kind of came out the other end, and we're, I guess, we're a little bit dazed and confused and trying to figure it all out. And for some other industries, you know, getting an MFA or a postgraduate qualification means something very specific, you know, whether it's medicine or engineering or something else. Whereas in fine art, it's maybe something a little bit more transient, or it's not so obvious what it actually means or involves. So yeah, it was really just a marker to kind of bind us together in this kind of uncertainty, but also slightly tongue-in-cheek, because it does mean, you know, that's done and that's proven and can't argue with that. So yeah, I guess it was a way to kind of bind us together as a group after the kind of 2-year pandemic and yeah, series of lockdowns.
You're forged by fire. You're like,
for sure, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Are you happy enough to carry on and do the first?
Yeah, so I mean, I know we're tight for time, and I haven't really prepared such a long kind of presentation, but I'm just going to talk very briefly about my work, both what I have in this exhibition and also some work that doesn't appear in the show. And yeah, just thinking about who, like what feeds my practice, and I guess what inspires me and who I draw from. It's I guess it's like, you know, not just a two-sided coin. It's almost like a dice. It's so many different sides and facets to that question. But I mean, in a really cheesy kind of way to answer that, I mean, I'm constantly inspired by my peers, by the people I work with. The institutions I work with. As you know, I do freelance museum photography, so I'm just constantly, you know, engaging with artists and arts professionals and curators and spaces. And I mean, I personally find that incredibly inspiring. And I'm kind of, you know, sometimes I'm a little bit surprised that when I go to make work, I realize it kind of maybe looks a little bit like something I photographed 6 months ago, and I'm trying to negotiate, you know, is that a coincidence? Is it not a coincidence? Is there some sort of like subconscious you know, admiration or copycat syndrome going on here? And actually I do have an example of it, and it's not something that I well, actually I did photograph it, but as you know, my sibling Emma Wolf Haugh is also an artist, and Emma's been inspiring me since, you know, day one. So I'm just going to share this if I can. Two seconds, there we go. So in 2015, Emma was invited by a group in IMA to make a piece of work. And Emma asked me to collaborate with them on it. And this is it. It's an installation of these hand shapes that we made together in response to a text that we read. And it was a lovely event. It was on the, we made it on the day the marriage equality referendum results were read out. And it was, you know, there was a kind of energy in the city, there was an energy in Dublin, and we made this piece of work together and presented in IMA in one of the project spaces. And then I didn't forget about it, but, you know, we drew a line under it. And then 4 years later, I make this piece of work. And it was only when I stuck the sheets of paper on the wall that I remembered the work I made with Emma. And it just, you know, it struck me because, you know, obviously you know, we're everything kind of comes from the same pot, and you know, I'm influenced by Emma, influenced by the people I work with. But yeah, it was funny that it was only when I saw the finished piece on the gallery wall that I actually stood back and I realized, excuse me, I realized that it's so incredibly similar. Now the provenance of the work and the ideas behind the work are completely different, but the aesthetic is there for sure. But yeah, that was part of a show that we had in Rua Red in 2020 called We Are Solitary. And here's another installation shot, which kind of brings me on to another point I just wanted to make about my work, and how I use a lot of photography in my work, obviously, but I'm interested in how we present and represent photographs and things that are made photographically in different settings. So the larger piece on the wall, the green forest, you can see it kind of intersects with the architecture of the gallery space. And I kind of saw the audience almost as a photographer in how they situate themselves into the gallery space. The image kind of separates and joins at different points. So you can see it's separated here, and then at a different vantage point, it's kind of almost a complete photograph again. So I was thinking about this cyclical nature of photography and how, you know, you start with an image, you can kind of break it down, deconstruct it, and then reassemble it in different ways, kind of through photography. So that's been a really a reoccurring theme in my work over the last couple of years, and certainly with the work I'm showing in NCAD gallery, it's kind of these layered photographic processes that are drawing on different kind of areas of research. So you can see this is not in the exhibition, but it's one of the research images I made. I see them as kind of like in-camera collages. They're pasted images on the studio wall, they're prints, there's a series of mirrors, there's photography stands, there's tripods. I'm in some of the photographs, or an arm is in some of the photographs, you know, a bit of me, or a bit of a camera. Here's another image. So they kind of look like these Photoshop collages, but they're made in camera, they're made in the studio, using mirrors and reflections and glass. Again, kind of referencing photography, referencing the mirrors that appear or occur in cameras. And also, you know, the kind of darkroom processes. Again, you know, the image is put through another series of lenses, of mirrors, of reflecting, refracting. And then here is, this actually is in the show. And although I'm in some of them, they're not, I don't really see them as, although it's a cliche to take a photograph of yourself and say it's not a self-portrait, I don't really see them as self-portraiture. I see it as like this figure within photography, within the history of photography, kind of reappearing in these photographs.
Just giving you a time check, Louis, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
About 2 more minutes, okay?
Yeah, perfect, yeah. That's the last slide. So the work draws on the history of forestry, landscape, place, identity, things like that. Looks at the kind of colonial history and processes that led to the deforestation of Ireland, and then looks at how the overlap of the reforestation of Ireland and also the formation of the Irish Free State in 1922, these kind of paradoxical kind of overlap of you know, forming a state, but then also replanting a landscape. So I'll stop sharing. That's a brief kind of introduction to some of the work. So I have the 2 framed images in the show in NCAD gallery, and I've also made some wallpaper that kind of responds to the architecture of the space. And there's also another work involved. Are you muted? No.
Let's just take that out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
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 Is there a video work involved as well, or is
there
that?
Is actually, so the images of the hands that you saw on the gallery wall, that was always intended to be a video. Those images were kind of reference shots that I took, but I ended up kind of making a work out of the images as well. So yeah, there is a video that I actually made with the help of Emma. So Emma's voice appears in the video as well. It was a nice kind of way to reference back to me stealing Emma's work.
But I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that video work. I was very interested in how, if or how that work was scripted, or if it was made like responsively. And when you were speaking about this idea of like reflecting and refracting as a kind of a methodology, I felt like maybe there's something like that happening in the video work as well. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was made during lockdown over Zoom. The audio was not the video. I made the video myself in the studio. Both of my hands appear in the video, but I kind of saw one of the hands kind of belonging to Emma in a way. But yeah, no, it wasn't scripted. I gave Emma very little information about it beforehand. I kind of outlined the kind of theme and topic of the conversation, but then I asked to play a very simple kind of word association game. So I would say one word, Emma would say the other word, and then we would go for as long as felt natural and organic, and you would come to a certain kind of conclusion. And we did that maybe 3 or 4 times.
So you had like a series of prompts that you were working from.
Yeah, I probably had about 6 or 7 kind of key words that constantly brought it back to the project. And we would go, so I would say something like, landscape, and Emma would reply, I would reply, and we'd go until that concluded, and then I'd pick it up with the next word. So sometimes it goes in a very linear way, and sometimes the last word is very similar to the first word, or sometimes it deviates completely.
There's an intimacy, I think, in the way that conversation happens, or that word association happens. That must be, maybe that speaks to the advantage of like working with the same person, in this case, your sibling, like over time, that you have almost like a shorthand with one another.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes one step further. I think it's like a deep trust as well. And I think it's allowing yourself to trust somebody so perfectly that actually, if you're under pressure and you're making a piece of work, that you know what you're going to get back is exactly what you need. Yeah, I mean, I've collaborated with Emma in the past, for sure, but it goes beyond that as well. There's a bit of an age gap between us. So Emma had a huge impact on my upbringing as a kid and as a teenager, and so that feeds into making the work as well. But I kind of mentioned that it is an intimate thing to do with a family member, but I think there's a lot of trust in it as well, because you're trusting the person to kind of give you what you feel you need, or what the work requires. It's not like you're stopping a stranger on the street and just hoping by coincidence you get what you get. You're trusting that they're going to treat the project with the sensitivity that you hope they will.
Great. And then maybe you could talk about the relationship between the images in the video. I mean, I won't dwell on the video any more than this, but I'm curious about the image in the video and the relationship to that script, or to not script, that conversation.
So the images in the video, you see these 2 hands rolling these different conifer needles, which is like this haptic way of identifying pine, spruce, and fir. So if it rolls like a toothpick, it's pine, like a matchstick, it's spruce, and if it's quite flat, it's a fir needle. So it was kind of like, haptic learning and knowledge and kind of sensory information, which at the time we're in lockdown, that those types of things felt intimate in themselves. We were kind of locked away on our own, and we were kind of craving these kind of moments of kind of touch and embrace and intimacy, I guess. So yeah, there is a relationship between the image and the audio, although they were made completely separately.
That really comes across, I think, that feeling around like haptics or around touch, because of the like extreme close-up and like the texture of the skin is visible, and the that sensation, or you almost like think of the experience of like smelling the needle, or it's yeah, definitely comes across.
Thank you.
And also just, I just really maybe just would comment on this like playful kind of layering of photographic images and processes, and just that I think it's really like, these images are very rich because of these different, I guess, registers that the photographs, because of the layering, that refraction, the mirroring, like this, there's something that's a little unsettling, or like you don't always know exactly what's happening. And that it means that you spend time like just trying to figure out which bit is the final photo that is taken, like which bit is actually, it's like it brings time into it somehow, I guess, because you're trying to like find your position as a viewer in terms of the making of the work, like which bit came first, which bit was layered onto that, which bits refract. It's very interesting anyway.
Well, I mean, time is so important in photography. Like, you know, the two raw ingredients of photography are light and time. So just being, you know, working with photography for so long, it seems almost too easy to take a photograph nowadays. So I'm, you know, to take photographs and present them and re-photograph them and kind of compose them in camera was just kind of seemed like the natural progression.
And like different, and they're materially different, they're printed onto different like types of materials, they're placed like, as you were speaking about, like within like,
yeah, I mean, some of them are high quality photographic prints, some of them are darkroom prints, some of them are photocopy prints that have been pasted to the wall. So yeah, it's like the kind of raw materiality of photography, from test strips and test prints and proof prints to final prints to re-photographing, all of that.
Great.
So I think that's probably time.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody else.
You're done. Okay. Thank you so much. It's really
thank you, Sarah.
great.
That's very insightful.
More about that. So I think we go on to Martyna.
Yeah, we're cam sharing. So
you're cam sharing,
over.
Of course. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my. 1 second. Yeah, so I guess we should start with introducing what I'm doing. So I'm mostly painter, but I'm also interested in sculpture and installation. And I guess when I'm thinking about what I'm doing, it's I paint or make awkward, confused, and hesitant figures in aim to explore our human existence. And in these scenarios I create in my paintings, I explore seriousness and laughable. They coexist in these dreamlike spaces that I paint. So I think it's the semi-familiar shapes and this kind of ludic color and active light helped me to shape this ambiguous and crooked narratives. And I was thinking about how to explain what I'm doing, and I came out with these words: vulnerable, human, helpless, hesitant, clumsy, perversive, rough, humorous, fragile, comical, tragic, struggling, precarious, silly, restless, unstable, ambiguous, awkward, tense, weird, fun, frustrated, mad, in the space, controlled. And I think that these words really, like putting them down on paper and helped me really to really put realize what I've been doing, because it's kind of, it's been a really, I think when I'm thinking about what it's feeding my practice, I think it's my own perception of the world that it's feeding it, and I've been looking at works by Beckett, especially his play Happy Days or Endgame. I've been looking at Philip Gaston as well. Really writing down these words kind of put a little bit of a shape onto what is going on in my head. And I think these shapes kind of come up to me, and I kind of, I feel like I want to paint them and I want to make them. I'm kind of also interested in the process, and I think this process is quite important for me in making these works, because all of these works are on paper, and they're kind of rough and ready, and I think there is a kind of bit of a kind of like a urban aesthetic in them, where I remove and put on paint. And
you were saying about an urban aesthetic, is that right?
Yeah, so I think it's a kind of like a crude materiality in them. Maybe references urban aesthetics, where things happen fast, bodies pass in transit, assemble, become visible, and through that political. And I think that's political is kind of interesting to me as well. And just looking at these figures that are missing heads, or even hands, and that means that they can see when they're heading, so or they kind of voice their concerns. So they're motivated by something more corporal and unconditioned. So I think there is something comical in them, but also something really tragic and sad. This universe is humorous, but also tragical, and all of these intertwine. And I think this relates to our daily experiences, where things not necessarily make sense, and this world isn't fair, and sometimes all we have left is the humor. And I think maybe through the humor we are able to point out to certain important things that are almost very basic. So I think that the shapes in my paintings are quite basic as well. So it's kind of like maybe stripping it down to just these lines that are suggesting something, but not necessarily giving everything away, or not giving the answer away. And recently I have been making a lot of these small sketches, and I'm interested in how they kind of I arranged them together in different grids, and I'm putting them in pairs, and I'm kind of interested in how they play with each other, and suggesting narratives, and the zooming into particular segments of the body. So I think that because they are isolating certain parts, it is these endings of the body they are talking about isolation and separation, but also inability to function. So like each painting is a certain character in this kind of ever-changing narrative. And all the portraits are obscure, so the subjects are in a way deprived of their identity. And interesting in this mystery and humor, there's almost lightheartedness to them, but there's also a feeling of hopelessness, I think, in the same time. And it's like, this is a sculpture I'm showing in the exhibition as well, and it's a big foot placed on a even bigger plinth. So the shape of the foot is taken from my paintings, and I just thought I had this idea that I wanted to make it physical, and then I wanted to be playful and bizarre, and so you don't know what it means. It's kind of it's a play with the audience, but also the plant has a certain physical and symbolic associations, and the size is just ridiculous. It's just so big, and suggesting that something important is placed on the plant, but it's just this really abject pink fudge. So it's with wiggling toes. So there's something extreme, I think, in it, and humorous. So yeah, I'd like to engage the viewer. I'm looking for a reaction of sorts when they see it, and I'm maybe at the beginning is just this surprise, and then I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of a laugh at the end. But I'm still, I think I'm commenting on something, but this is I think I'm waiting for the viewer to kind of make their own judgments of how do they feel about it.
What is the foot made of?
It's paper mache.
Okay.
And chicken wire inside.
So again, it's like monumental. It's at this monumental scale, but it's made of like a very like humble kind of material.
Yeah, it's always like something that children do in schools as well.
There's something about the process of making art that is like, in general, that is like, this is like a great example of like something that's like a simple drawing or a simple like sketch that you've done, that you've then taken it to the limit of its like of possibility somehow. Like you've scaled it up, you've made it three-dimensional out of like a two-dimensional thing, and you've like, yeah, you've put it on a giant plinth and made it. It's like the absurdity is extended and extended and extended, like to the kind of like limit. I guess you could make it out of like gold or something to make it even more. But there's something very interesting in that process. And I do think that there's like, I mean, when you first look at it, it's like comical. It's like a cartoon kind of a foot, right? Like a, but then it makes you think, like, because of its color, maybe because it looks a bit swollen, it makes you think of like damage or a wound, or yeah, there's something very interesting about that as well. And I think the paintings and these kind of anthropomorphized objects are super interesting. And I really like the way you speak about them, like the urban aesthetic and this idea of like the churn of like the new all the time, and people as part of maybe an urban machine somehow. And I remember when I've seen your work before, I was thinking of these mythological figures, these blemmies that are from Greek mythology, and they're headless men, and so they have like a face on their torso. They have no head, but then they have a full face on the torso and legs. But there's something that I guess I feel like these works like sit in a history somehow, or they sit within there's like a very interesting maybe set of like art historical precedents or like mythological precedents to them. Yeah, and I wonder if you could talk about the small sketches a little bit more. I feel like the temptation for me with those is that I start to like, do you know this game Exquisite Corpse, where you fold the paper and somebody draws the head, somebody draws the body, but you don't see what the other bits that have been drawn already are. Somehow there's a temptation with these to like assemble them into a figure. And I wonder if you could talk about that. Like, it seems like a kind of a fractured whole figure, or just like maybe speak a little bit more about how they work with one another.
Yeah, I think putting them together, it's more kind of I'm trying to find two that I like the way they're they kind of sit next to each other. But then I like to also imagine the connection between them, that there is some sort of story behind them, that there is, and then I also add titles to them. So if I have them in pair, and I think this one here was I named it Lost and Something Lost, Something Found. So I was thinking about lost identity, because this head doesn't have a face, but then something found, something found in the foliage. So then in my head, this grows into some sort of story, and I'm hoping that that the viewer picks up that this sort of game with me and plays together with me, and makes come up with this story as it happens, maybe in between the two of them, in this little gap.
Nice. Great. Maybe we'll leave it there, and
Yep.
I can just say, like, congratulations on this body of work, and it's very nice to see.
Right, thank you.
Maree?
Hi. Just with regard to your questions, I'm a media artist. I'm particularly drawn to time-based media works. What feeds my practice? I think it's fair to say lived experience feeds my practice. At the moment, I'm very preoccupied with the theme of memory, like reflection, recollection, revisiting painful memories. And I think that I find it very cathartic to express myself through art. I'm very interested in Sigmund Freud's theory of psychoanalysis, where, you know, unconscious memories can cure, you know, psychiatric conditions, and all that kind of talk therapy. So I'm very preoccupied. I'm kind of fascinated with the human psyche, if I'm being honest. And he also talks about sublimation. It's a kind of a self-defense mechanism. I would say very much of my art practice is a form of my own sublimation, you know. So that's kind of what feeds it. I'm always visiting exhibitions. I love looking at other artists' work. I get inspired all the time by my peers. I do find some theorists like Kathy Carruth. I read some of her works, just with regard to memory and that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, and my classmates have been, you know, inspire me all the time. So they're kind of, that's the core of what feeds my practice. And then just about my work, I made a short film. I'm going to screen share with you now at the moment as well. So for this particular exhibition, I'm showing my short film. So it's a non-narrative film. There's no talking in it, besides like a 1-minute voiceover at the end. And this film, it's an autobiographical film. So it's about.
You didn't share this.
Oh, did I not? Sorry. One sec. Let me just go back. Thanks, Martyna. Sorry, let me just share the screen. Yeah, let's go there. So yeah, it's a film about a man I met in India, an American Swami, who really helped me during a difficult time in my life. He offered spiritual guidance. He was a great support to me. I think that will resonate. I think it's a universal audience, to be honest. We all experience friendship in our lives. We all go through dark times, and we always remember the people who were there for us, you know. So this particular film, it's kind of, he passed away in 2013. So this film is dedicated to his memory, and it's kind of a celebration of our time together in India. So I decided to tell the story through the movement of the body. So I kind of captured the essence of contemporary dance, and I'm telling that story through movement of the body. So it's improvised dance movement. So I'll just show you a couple of slides. A lot of people ask me why I shot the film by the ocean. And that's quite symbolic because Alexander, when he passed away, he was cremated and his ashes were scattered into the ocean. He was a very free-spirited person. So I think that's kind of a hidden metaphor with regard to shooting it by the ocean. Seagulls are kind of prevalent by the ocean. He used to talk about Chekhov. He used to quote the line from a Chekhov play, "I'm a mourning for my life," you know, and that's from the play called The Seagull. So there's all these kind of hidden metaphors. And that's just an expression through contemporary dance. I'm having a meltdown. So I fall into the ground, and that's like an aerial shot of that particular dance movement. And that's another kind of expression of the past, the present, the future. However, that's very kind of relevant to memory as well. You know, you're reflecting on the past, and you know, sometimes you're stuck in the present because you haven't dealt with the past, you haven't revisited the past, you know, so that's all kind of tied into memory. And that's another image to kind of represent spiritual guidance, you know. He was a very wise man, and he gave some very good advice, you know. With this particular exhibition, I kind of wanted to transgress away from a single kind of channel output, and I wanted to explore different ways of showing the film. So I've kind of done a 5-channel video installation. That's kind of very much inspired by Isaac Julian, the media artist. He had an amazing exhibition in MoMA. So yeah, I know it's nothing on that scale, but I just love looking at different ways to kind of install time-based media work. So I think it's quite a unique installation in the gallery, in that the projector screens are suspended at different lengths from the ceiling, and they're faced at different angles. And that's just to kind of give the audience a kind of, there's a multi-dimensionality to it. And also, I suppose, just to make use of vitality to the exhibition space. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of, you know, just explore that multi-channel output as opposed to a single channel output.
And how does the viewer sit within that multi-channel? Is it about the body of the viewer and their interactions with the screens?
Sarah, I think you're muted.
I shouldn't be. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Can't hear me.
Oh,
I can hear you.
No, I stopped sharing.
No, but you probably.
I can hear you as well.
You probably, your sound is down.
Is
You just sounded down.
Oh.
No, on your computer.
Where? It's not down though. Where do you see that? No, it's not. I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay.
No, sorry.
It was just to ask, could you speak a little bit more about the multi-channel, like the screens, and how they're positioned in relation to the body of the viewer? Or is that part of it, that you're bringing the viewer in to like into some kind of?
Pretty much part of it. They're suspended, I'd say about over 6 foot from the ground to above the head.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea is that the viewer can walk around underneath the projector screens, and when they walk into the gallery, they're looking up at the screen. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of ascension. It's quite relevant. Alexander's passed away, his soul is ascended, and it's just kind of looking up. And they're suspended at different heights, just to give a different perspective, a viewing perspective, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the viewer can just walk around freely within the space. They're double-sided projector screens, so when they're behind a screen, they can still see the film being projected. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I too had the question that people, I guess you were saying, have asked about like making the work on the beach. And like, once you make that choice, you are engaging with a history of landscape, of depicting landscape. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, about the, yeah, like where does this sit in relation to landscape work?
Yeah, well, you see, the ocean, there's a lot of sea swimmers out there, and like they're from all walks of life. A lot of people, even with physical disabilities, swim in the ocean. There's something very healing about the ocean. You know, people talk about ocean therapy, sea therapy. So I just find the ocean extremely cathartic. It's a place I go to from having a bad day. The sound of the ocean. And you can hear the sound of the ocean, you know, throughout the film. I think it's just kind of, it's a metaphor again. And also the fact, I think, Alexander's ashes were spread into the ocean. So it's just kind of a freedom about the ocean, you know, and it replenishes, it can replenish you as well, you know, replenishing healing aspects to it. I did allude to earlier on in the presentation that Alexander used to quote a lot of philosophers and used to quote from plays, and he used to quote a line from a Chekhov play, "I'm a mourning for my life," and that play is called The Seagull. You have a lot of seagulls by the ocean. So those type of things kind of, you know, help me with that decision. Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit more about your process with the, I presume, dancer that you worked with? Like, how, I mean, you were saying that some of the movement was improvised, but obviously all of it was improvised. And what were your instructions to him around this? Like, what did you speak about the narrative that you were trying to tell, or how did you instruct him in the making of the work?
Well, we collaborated with the choreographer. We actually worked with 2 choreographers, and I had to send them through my thesis, excerpts from my thesis about my experience, and then they picked lines from my thesis and from my experience. And, you know, when you were having a bad day, you know, how did you feel? And if you could express that through the movement of the body, how would you do that? And it was extremely challenging, but again, very cathartic. So we worked, to answer your question, we worked under the guidance of 2 choreographers.
Okay, so it was improvised at a certain point in the process. You improvised these movements, or you worked together like to improvise, and then you emerged with a choreography that you then enacted on to make the film?
First got us to improvise the movement.
Yeah, okay.
So and when you see the film, he brings a very masculine quality. Like we dance, we don't do the same thing all the time. I've got my own style of dance, he's got his own style, and they kind of encourage us to do something that feels natural, you know, not to do something that doesn't feel natural. So he's a little bit more agile than I am. He can do a lot more, you know, acrobatic things than I can, but it comes natural to him. It doesn't come so natural to me. So, but there is this kind of archetype of masculinity and femininity throughout the dance as well. So we worked under the guidance of a choreographer.
Okay,
yeah,
great. And can you talk a little bit about the sound in the film as well?
Yeah, so we have it's like the main, I suppose, the main score in the film is by a singer composer, Lisa Jarrard. She's an Australian singer, composer, writer, composer. So what's quite unique about her is that she invents her own language when she sings. Initially I thought she was singing in Latin, but she invents her own language, so you don't know what she's singing about. Again, you just have to kind of, you know, visualize or imagine, you know, what she's singing about. And I just wanted to keep in theme, in line with that kind of abstract storytelling. So that was my decision in using one of her songs. And at the very end, there's a voiceover by a voiceover actor, and it's the very last message that Alexander wrote to me. It was a very final message. When I read that message, I knew there was something very final about it. So I thought to finish the film with that was appropriate and moving. Yeah, even poetic. I'd go as far as saying poetic. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that insight into the work.
Thank you.
Great to hear. Can we hear from Kitsch, please?
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. So I guess I'll start. So I have made a presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm going to go as fast as possible because, like most artists, I tend to ramble on. So I'm going to read a little bit here. So my work is inspired by theories on gender, sociology, and posthumanism. I transform myself into fictional characters through acting techniques such as improvisation and method acting, and through performance, video, and social media experiments and print. I explore new ways of conceptualizing the self. I work with the many layering processes behind human experience and how we are living in a strange, chaotic time in the world that lies in between dated traditional values and trailblazing digital realities. And the imprint of man is changing. So in a world where being human isn't cutting it, where does our sense of self lie? And that is the main question for me. My work, I always like come back to this main theme of self-creation. It's all about self-creation. And I kind of couch everything under the term living collage as well, because everything I make is a collage. And it's all like just as important as each other. I almost see everything as part of one huge collage. And some texts and theories that inspire me and I always go back to. First one is Performativity by Judith Butler, Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, and The Posthuman by Rosie Braidotti. These are always something I come back to, and texts that have really changed my life and changed my perspective on everything. And my work is always made to do with these kinds of themes and theories. Some artists and filmmakers that constantly like feed my practice, David Lynch, always. And David Lynch is a printmaker. I really relate with him. He is a painter as well, and he creates his films really to do with his paintings and the characters and figures he makes in his artwork. So that transfer of 2D to 3D into life. And then also Matthew Barney, of course, and Alex DeCourt. They really inspire me, especially to do with like the absurdity of like and symbolism and posthuman themes in Matthew Barney's work, and Alex DeCourt, repetition, celebrities, and role playing and becoming and method acting and becoming celebrities. So I'm a printmaker. This is what I studied for my BA. This is probably the first, this is like the mother of all my work. This is where it all started. This is the origin. So this is Act 1, Scene 1, Gender Ends, and it's a juxtaposition of different types of printmaking techniques: digital printmaking, linoleum printmaking, and etching and watercolor. I like to juxtapose like man-made materials and natural materials together to show like the theories that I'm interested in, like the mind and how you feel inside is like natural, which is why I use copper for the heads, and the body is a man-made kind of historical idea. Okay, and then I wanted to make new characters, and this is one of my newer characters, Meryl Days. I made a film, which was like a living collage of my print. She's a hybrid. She's a hybrid of a burglar and a bride, and I just imposed like the image and the iconography of Marilyn Monroe onto her face, and you can see that film. These are some characters that I have made that I perform as Meryl Days and her husband Beltman. And I collaborate with Roshan Gartland, who's a great artist, a friend of mine as well, and a leather specialist to create the belt mask you see here. And so they also have cyborg children. So the parents are humans, and here are their cyborg teenage children. And this is Junior on the left-hand side. The image of his father, he has a lot of identity issues because he's a junior of somebody, clearly. And then there's Loring, who's a non-binary superhero. And each of these characters represents either traditional roles or like, digital realities or, they're also I think it's important to note that all my characters are antagonists, and they go against social norms, or they go against, what is expected of them, and they want to antagonize the audience, but in a humorous way as well. And so some things that also are feeding my practice at the moment in the present are like user interfaces for social media, and performing and bringing my characters in this social media space. And I think they might be living now in this digital space rather than in reality. And another thing, I've just moved to Miami. I live near the Everglades now, and like the natural environment and the nature around me has always fed my practice. I write iPhone notes poetry almost every day, and in the voices of my characters, or even in my own voice. And this is something that I'm always doing. So I'm always performing in a way, even in small moments. And the queer experience and the natural world and the UI, user interfaces of technology, these are all things I want to collage together, and that constantly feed me right now. And yeah, that's all I have to say right now. Hope that was fast enough.
That was great. Great to hear. Do you also have a film in the exhibition, or can you talk us through what physically is in the space?
Yes. I should have actually said that. I'm going to be performing tomorrow as Junior. And it's going to be a live stream performance on social media, on Instagram. And it's going to be a non-performance, actually, because Junior is quite against that. He's too cool for social media and things like that. So that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be like an introduction to him as a character. And it's going to be a comment on social media as a whole as well.
And will people access that on their phone, or will it be projected in the space, or how will it be?
So yes, they can access it on the phone. Anybody can access it anywhere they are. Accessibility is now like a huge thing for me as well, because I'm in Miami. And then it's also going to be an event and an installation in the gallery space. So that's going to be on a monitor, on a portrait kind of like mode, like a phone. So it's going to be like a giant phone in the gallery that everybody can watch together. And so yeah, I think that's going to be nice. I wish I was there, but it'll make me feel like I'm kind of there with you.
Well, that's what's so interesting to me. I mean, I was very surprised actually I feel like there's like a hyper real and hyper digital like character to much of your work. And like, it was nice to see the film work that's online that shows the characters in space or in this kind of like digital space. maybe you could talk a little bit about that. But I'm super interested in the relationship to the natural worlds, that the Everglades it's becoming something that like feeds into this work somehow, because it seems so dematerialized. It seems so like far away from the kind of like your poem is speaking about the smells and the touch and the so I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that relationship.
Oh, well, the natural world has always been something that has inspired me, and I have made performances like in fields and things like that before with spoken word and just combining all those things. And I guess putting like a queer body in the landscape like that is just something that seems fitting to me, because it is a natural thing. But it seemed like almost like my characters kind of like go against what is human nature or considered human nature, but at the same time they are natural and they make themselves in a very organic way. And also because now I'm thinking of the user interfaces and nature, and like the sawgrass here and the crocodiles here and the animals here and things like that, it just it just goes back to this other like theme that is always really important in the work, is that how we are being integrated with technology, like, and it is becoming natural for us, and we are part of it in a very organic way. And technology and us, I don't see much of a difference there. It's alive just like we are, and we are it, and it is us, so there's no disconnect there.
That's great. I mean, that's super interesting to hear, and thinking about the post-human in that way. The post-human exists also in amongst the sawgrass somehow.
Yeah.
Could you maybe speak to the film that's available to view online that I just made mention of there, and like how does it change these characters, or does it change them, or just like how does it connect to have them in this like virtual space as opposed to like a live performance, as opposed to being received through your phone or on Instagram Live? Like, just talk a little bit about those different, why you make those different choices at different moments.
So why I would make a film, or why I would make a social media post or something like that.
Yeah. What are the different contexts that make those different modes of display work, or make them
I suppose like, some things like I kind of use everything. I do photography, I do film, I do printmaking, I think social media now is a medium in itself for me. Because I let like social media, there's glitches and stuff like that. I feel like that's like the interface, like improvising with me and things like that. So like there's so much there that's its own medium. Photography, it's like a process for me. So like first I think of the character and I become the character, and I perform as the character through photography first. And then the second thing is to make, social media posts with it to create the character even further, because I feel like it's like a catalyst in a way. And how would they perform? And the audience, and knowing that there's an audience, helps me like realize this character even further in a social context. And then I create a video, almost like an insight into their like psyche and their inner worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And then I suppose that's really like the process. And then a live performance is like, it's just something that like needs to be said in the moment. Like my spoken word performances, I know when some of them need to be in a video, and I know when some of them need to be spoken in person. It's just how it is. It's almost like to do with the character itself. It's like, I need someone to hear this from me, So it's very much organic. And though there's a process, but there's also like decisions that I make, because you can just feel it, what needs to be done in the presence of, like, I have to shout it out. I can't shout this to somebody through a screen, it's just how it is.
I love the way you bring it back to that print as well. The print that includes like photographic, what were the other, it's like there's a lino cut, etching, watercolor, and digital print. Bringing it back to that or starting from there, I think really helps to understand the way you're layering these other materials or these other mediums, like layering the costuming, the performance, the social media, the film, it's like that analogy really comes through clearly, and love it. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, I forgot to also mention, which is important, like in the background of what the cyborg teenagers, the kids, that is like made in a gaming engine called Unreal Engine. So like that's like another part of the world that they live in, a game world. Mm-hmm. That's actually important to mention. So I'm just like, bringing that the different like elements of the prints that I make and like bringing it into like into media. Then how would I just change? I mean, collage, everything to do with media then. So I'm glad you got that. That's great.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
At your practice, that insight. Terrific. Great. Will we move on to Anne-Marie?
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
I'm Maree, and I'll just talk briefly, I guess, what it's mostly going to be me talking about this practice and what's in the exhibition, but just a brief backstory in the sense that I sculpture would have been my main medium, and I'd be obviously very hands-on, and I like using chicken wire, hessian, latex, anything that's messy and gluey, and to build and to make a sculpture. And obviously the transition from studio to home became trying to work around that. My kitchen became the studio, like for everybody, the back garden, the bathroom, whatever. And I did find it a little bit difficult to try and transition into sculpture outside or in the kitchen. Didn't work out really well. So for me, it turned into video work, which wouldn't be my foremost practice. And I found that quite interesting and challenging and rewarding, really, really. And so what started out as a performance piece, or the idea of a performance piece in Rua Red, completely changed to video. And it turned into, it was always going to be about the bathtub and water and breathing underwater. And what feeds my practice mostly would be emotions, feelings, memory, and the body. And I look at the body in the sense of it's a skin, and from birth we're obviously in a membrane. Before we're born, we come out into the world, and all that tactile, messy substance, trying to express that through video. So for me, the endurance and the breathing underwater, trying to hold my breath, the bubbles, and even the space, like doing a God shot looking down on it. I found that always fascinating and interesting. And as I got a little bit more confident and familiar with Premiere Pro and Premiere Rush and all of those, I began using abstract and different apps to manipulate the video. And the video almost portrayed how I was feeling, like split, breathing offline, not connected to the world, and those emotions and feelings. And then mostly about home and my surroundings and the space. And it was like, if you're safe in your bubble of home, that's okay if you have a home. And like the outside became the air itself. So it fed into one another, all of which art does, and all of the topics, whether it's what's going on in history or the climate change or political, that art feeds into all of those. And I'm going to show a little short video. It's a trailer of something that through Bella was actually our Kitsch Doom, where she was putting them up on a website where you could obviously enter in your short video, whether it's a student video or experimental video. So a lot of mine I entered as experimental, and won a couple of awards and etc. for them. So that little bit of encouragement kind of prompts you to go a little bit further. And I'm going to share it because I think maybe even if it's screen sharing now, my son does call me a Luddite. So I'm going to attempt the screen sharing and have it, just bear with me. I have it on a YouTube video, but I'm not sure. I apologize. I don't think I'm actually sharing it.
Do you have the tab open of the YouTube video?
I do.
Okay. So then when you go to share screen at the bottom, and then it should come up with maybe some pictures of different possibilities of things you could share.
Yeah, I can see
Can you
that.
see it?
I've got the screen of all of us, like the NCAD and all of us, and I've got I've got YouTube. Just bear with me.
There we go.
Yeah, I apologize. I'll go back to the
Fine.
beginning, and I won't obviously play all of it. But this was a trailer that when I was submitting for say like offline videos, and one of them was Crawford College in Washford, or in, I beg your pardon, in Cork, and this one got selected, but for me, that when it became abstract, it portrayed that like being split in two, unrecognizable, and going back to speaking of what feeds into my work, it's because it's so tactile. I found it difficult to relay this through a video. So the sound behind it, that's my breath over music. My husband has sleep apnea, so the breathing and all of that, and again fed into, initially it was called I Can't Breathe, but that was back 2 summers ago, and I changed that because it was too close to political situation that was going on in the world at the time.
Sure.
So I feel as well, though, even a lot of my work would be about text, words, emotions. Sometimes the visual and the sound can express more than me talking, like I'm talking over it now.
And how these images are very abstract. How did you generate these images, or can you talk a little bit about the process of making this?
The process of making it, initially I made it very difficult for myself, trying to use Premiere Pro and Premiere Rush and trying to figure it all out. And I realized that on the phone, just the ordinary phone, you can have video editing, video apps, manipulate them, split them, film, GoPro, whatever, you know, and it was so much easier. They were done literally within, I could be lying in the bed watching television and doing it at the same time. There was no complication. It was really, really straightforward. And once they were split and the image I knew was originally me, like to archive, it's quite important for me to archive, keep and document my work. I love scrapbooks and folders. So once I've taken a picture and I keep it, it's what it originally started off as, and then it went on. I had initially created a cube, which was outside in the back garden. It was 6 by 6, and the material was quite latex, and the impression of my body up against it, your hands, your face. But it also gave me the freedom to experiment behind it, because it was containment, it was enclosement. So I didn't mind taking off my t-shirt, pressing my body up in it, so up against it, so there would be body parts that I wouldn't normally expose. So I'm exposing but hiding, and it's that delicate balance in between what you want people to see and what you're trying to get them to see. I find that fascinating, totally fascinating. Have a few notes for myself, because I want to stop talking soon, and I just want to make sure I've covered everything. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's 10 minutes
sorry.
anyways, Ari, so don't worry if you don't.
Grand. Yeah, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's very interesting. I mean, I have watched the work with the cube and this membrane pressing against it, or like the body pressing through, and that idea of exposing and hiding. I wonder if that is maybe something that's happening with these digital images, or with this like film work here, that like when you put a filter on something, or when you digitally manipulate it, is it part of that same process of like exposing certain things and hiding certain things? Or like the source material for this work, the breathing offline, and unfortunately I'm not sure if other people could, but I couldn't hear the sound very well. Sometimes it doesn't play that well through Zoom, but I'm understanding from you that the sound is one of the most important elements of this work as well. Is that correct?
Sound definitely is. Obviously the expression of silence speaks louder than words, but even that slow rhythmic breathing and the struggling of the breath, the eerie music that I played with it is something I'm not sure. So all of the time I would be experimenting, learning, and it isn't until it's in a certain space, like the studio space or the outside space, that I'm fascinated with the curating side of, it really is all about the space that you're in at the time, at that present moment. And what I have in my mind and what I think might work until I get into the space, I don't really have any idea. Depending on the architecture and the space itself, but
So how did that impact on the work? Like, talk us through the work in the gallery, the NCAD gallery. What's the encounter there, and how did the space there help to form that?
Well, because literally I live, I don't live in Dublin, I only live in Kilkenny, which is not that far away, but the up and down was fascinating as well, to get out, to be out in the world again. The gallery space was a lot bigger initially than I thought, but as it starts to fill up. So when I bought the cube up, I'm very thankful for the help of Anne Kelly and the curating, because my cube was initially 6 by 6. It was quite big, and it's been cut down to size. I haven't been up since, but Anne has kept in contact with me and emailed me, and I have pictures. And it's changing before my eyes so I'm readjusting my work to fit into the space, which is good. And it's completely different. It's completely different than what it was, which is a progression, which is needed, because I feel, just for me personally, it changes all the time, and if I'm showing the same work, I won't stay interested. So it's got to be different. I think I'll stop talking.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much for talking us through that. Great to hear a bit more about your practice. So can we go to Barbara, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Will I ask, have you seen the film I'm showing? You have? Okay.
I believe so. I have seen the film. Hang on, I will tell you.
Hiding in the Grain?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during my MFA, I made 4 short experimental films, and this is the last one, the longest one, 15 minutes long. Maybe I will try to share. I don't have audio with it, so it should be okay. Just to have a little bit of visuals there. Do you see that? Okay. So I would say my work in general, and I started as a painter during my BA on Sherkin Island. I really wanted to know how to draw and paint. And I spent most of my time outdoors, and I shot. That's how I started to flirt with a video camera and with editing software, but it didn't feel like the right time. And then 4 years after, I decided to become a mother. And so it was easier to change that painting, oil painting, and all that mess that comes with it to making films. And the most inspirational artist, film artist, would be Mark Leckey and his Dream in English Kid. When I was looking at his interview about his filmmaking, about his process, he said that basically he went to the concert and he thought back in 60s in his case, in my case, it was 80s, 90s. He was trying to find himself in some document that was made about the concert. And so I thought, that's a brilliant idea. I really wish to go back in time, because I was struggling with who am I, what's my identity, the Czechoslovakia I come from. And at the time the film was made, this one, Hiding in the Grain, in 2020, I struggled with my identity. Who am I really? Where do I belong? What happened to my friends? And I call it in between space. I just feel myself, maybe now it's better because it's like self-therapy a little bit. Whatever I make, whatever's inside, I just use the medium of film to express. And going back to Mark Leckey, he said that everything can be found online. And it was like, oh, brilliant. So I spent hours and hours looking, watching 80s and 90s footage from former Czechoslovakia. And it really helped me to understand also the child I was back then and what kind of fears I had to deal with. So the main, I'd say, core in this film, the core memory would be 1986, the Chernobyl, when my mom was telling us the day after when it happened at the kitchen table that we might die one day. And it was my earliest fear. I started to, you know, the death and life. If she was late, I thought she's gone. So basically, with this film, I firstly deal with my memories from my childhood fears, but also with vanishing friendships and where do I belong. These shots are made by me from Sherkin Island, where you have those dwellings, and I ask questions like who lived there and what is their story. So it is a little bit narrative, but it is most likely autobiographical. But when I never think really at the beginning about the audience. I don't know if it's okay to say, I don't really care much. I just care about myself and about dealing with my own issues. Thank you very much. Tea is coming. But then when I showed the film, and it went to a few festivals as well, which is great, and I talked to people who saw it, they really find themselves in it, because you have so many foreigners these days. Ireland itself has a huge history of, you know, immigrants and everything. Or also not belonging, finding your own sexuality. This balance in between us, I find even now when I am nearly homeless, it's just so rich. Our life is, so that would be my main, this is the Chernobyl disaster. My own life and memories would be the main inspiration and spark. And I start from that core memory, and the film starts, because I do everything on my own, basically. These footages are found, but I'd say 90% of the footage in the film is shot by me, and then I edit it. It would be much easier if I have somebody with me. But I'd say it makes it even more personal in a way. And so from that core memory from Mark Leckey's film, I just add and add and add, and it just grows the core, and all of a sudden you have an apple you can eat. And then I just send it to the world and see what happens. I don't know. that might be it. Quick, no?
Great. When I watched the film, I had like a strong sense of, I guess, longing, like some of those things that you were speaking to about like transitions in your life, or like losing connection with people, or I guess like these distances and vanishing friendships. Like it feels very much like it speaks to this present moment, or the moment that we have been going through and are like still continuing to go through to a certain extent. And I wonder if you could talk about making this work, like layering, like building these layers in a time of like social isolation, or like connection filtered through the digital, or like how did that feed into the thinking around the work?
Thank you. It's a great question, actually. I forgot to mention that this film became my best friend, well, all together with Sarah Durkin, who was my advisor. But I really spent so much time with it during the lockdown. It took a good few months, but also I was still I'm a full-time mother. So on the other hand, I had to mind a child who was with me at the same time. So this was really, I was like this horse with the blocks, and you didn't care about your neighbors. You just said hello, and that was it. And it might just speak about that certain kind of isolation as well. But layering, I think, as I said before, the main core was a memory. And then in addition to the memory came my, the friends come in, and also they're still there. But also sexuality. More I started with, more it felt like it wanted to show, or it wanted to talk. I kind of, it's not me, of course it's me who's doing it, but it feels sometimes when I work, not so much. I'm just like channeling whatever needs to get out. So I really helped myself, selfishly enough, with the film. Also during the pandemic, because the film was always, okay, I see now my friends. I had them at the time when I couldn't see them. Well, this is like 10 years ago, and it's in a gay bar. I think it is we played pool. But that was my connection. The film became really, really my best friend during that lockdown. I don't know if I answered your question at all, but there are many layers, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Could you talk a little bit about the title, Hiding in the Grave?
Forgot. Yeah, absolutely. It's the woman voiceover says that at the end, what really meant home to me. And Mark Leckie helped me with it. And also the grain, I just made it myself, and green screen and all that. When I was 4 or 5, hiding in the big metal barrel of grain was really that feeling of home, safety, secure. I didn't care about the rest of the world. So that's my son's age basically now. So this warmth place where you're not worried about anything. So, and hiding in the grain was that memory. I really wanted to try to visualize that memory, but again, it kept adding and wanted it more than, and that's the longest one I could. I made Earth Calling for Aurora Red. That was maybe only 3.5 minutes long. Yeah, it's like a baby.
It's quite sensual, like the image of that, of being surrounded by this material, or you imagine the feeling of it or the touch of it as well. There's something very...
Yeah, look, this is what I was trying to paint. Now go back into painting, and just made a title, Hiding in the Grain, visually more appealing, but I don't think I will include it.
Yeah. Sorry, 2 seconds. Gather my thoughts.
It's okay.
There's something about when you were saying that you don't care about the audience. I mean, you can say, like, you can totally say that, I actually think you're quite generous to your audience, because you're trying to make this story legible. You're trying to create a narrative that can be received by your audience. You obviously, there's an urge to communicate. So it's not enough to just like gather these things and put them together in some way that only makes sense to you. You're also making sense of it for your audience. So I think you do care.
Thank you.
About your audience.
The initial idea was for me, and
Yeah,
then it grew for
yeah. Well, I mean, it's good. It's, you know, like you were saying, that this is almost like you're trying to find yourself. And sometimes the way that you find yourself is to narrate yourself to somebody else. And that's what helps you to like find your way into your own story. So maybe, I mean, maybe you're doing it from like a selfish place or like an internal place, but what results is something that is communicating as well. So yeah, I think it's quite successful in communicating to an audience. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So, so briefly about my work is the title for the work for this show, Q.E.D. The title of my work is "This is Normal," and this comes out of what we have come out of, which was the whole COVID pandemic, which is kind of now being put behind us, and it's kind of my thoughts on what is normal, you know, what's normal. So this is normal. That just applies to anything. So from a series of work I did for Rua Red, no, it wasn't Rua Red, for the MA, was a series of drawings, approximately A3, roughly in size, black biro, on this kind of like really nice artist archival paper. Oh, hang on, I'll start screen sharing and show you some of the images. I have to multitask, do two things at the same time. Bear with me. Okay. Okay. No, yeah, this one. Okay, so can everybody see that? Oh, what's happening? Oh. I don't. Okay, did anybody see a screen share there? Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
hang on.
but
My screen just went blank, so bear with me. I'll do it again.
we see ourselves.
There's
yeah.
screen share. Yeah, that's good.
Hang on. Okay, good. Thanks. Okay, here. Okay, that's not what I want to share, but don't know why it's doing that. Okay, can everybody see things now?
Yeah.
Okay. So series of drawings, about 29 of them, black biro on nice artisty paper, and the black biro is really, you know, it's really cheap. I started by using free black biros that I had collected from a bank, and then I ran out of those, so I had to buy like the cheapest of cheap. But they're nice quality. They're lovely and inky, and they give a lovely blackness and darkness. So a lot of the pictures are quite dark. And everything is very slow. And so I'm kind of looking at, in inverted commas, the everyday, you know, the old everyday. And not just our present everyday, but everydays from the past. So things like vases of flowers and smoke are a recurring theme in this series of drawings. And from the 29 drawings that I have, I'm showing about 4 in this exhibition. And what I'm doing is presenting them like this. as we wait. And that is on a white plinth. And you can see a little stack of drawings there. And it is literally quite black and white. So I'm going to come out of screen sharing and show you. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so this is all eating into like 10 minutes and 5 minutes. Okay, so I don't know what's going on here. Okay. So what I'm just going to show you this. So this is can you see? Oh my goodness. Okay, not sure if you can see, but yeah, okay, something like that. Okay, so it's something like that, and there's literally just balancing on it. So what I suppose is the idea is what I'm conveying is it's a house of cards. It's black and white. We've got an everyday object of the biro contrasting with the artist's materials. And the title of This is Normal. And the images that I've selected from the 29 are, one is of a fish kind of choking on a beach. Another is of, which I really like, it's cigarette ashtray. Let's see again, I daren't, will I try screen sharing again? Can you bear the weight?
Yeah.
Okay. So the cigarettes in an ashtray, which I really like. An explosion, which is very timely, I think, for this current normal. And on top, again, let me see, where is the, okay, there's the cigarettes in the ashtray. And I quite like the cigarettes because they have loads of associations of, they're dangerous to your health, they're bad, they're not a good thing to be associated with. And yet there was a whole kind of manufacturer, I suppose, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe, that people were cool to smoke them, and it's there, no problem, don't worry about your health. Well, they kind of knew there was something wrong with them, but sure, everybody did it. They all smoked. And then there's also the kind of like after a cigarette, like the kind of, there's something sinister about them. So suggesting that something has happened or something might be going to happen. So there's a lot of associations with them. And then the picture I have balancing on top is this one here. And it's simply kind of a view, kind of voyeuristic, as you can see, hopefully you can see, it's nice shoes, nice tights, nice legs, sort of knee-length skirt, just sort of like, what's going on? I quite like it as a composition, but I'm not sure, what it's saying. I don't know if it's, I don't know how people will read it. Will they read it as something that's at face value, a nice image of a person's legs in interesting tights with a nice flowing skirt? Or are they going to read it as it's suggestive, it's inappropriate? Does it look like I'm trying to see up her skirt? Why is the view at this angle in the first place? So I want my work to create questions. And maybe now to finish off, combined with this plinth, with the drawings balanced like a house of cards, on the window will be a appearance of broken glass. So one of the big panes in the NCAD gallery will have a suggestion that it's been smashed. And hopefully, again, just for a moment, maybe people passing, because I do want to reach out beyond the kind of art world. I want to reach out to a wider audience that may not be in the world of art that I live in. So, and again, that combines with the whole thing of what's normal. This is normal, is it normal? what's normal. That's me.
So just talk me through that again, the smashed glass. It's on the window. It's
Well,
on
I don't.
gallery.
I suppose I have to give away all the secrets, but
You don't have to. You don't
I
have
know,
to.
no, there's no secret really. I did initially want to kind of smash the glass, but
Okay.
I did look into, you know, replacing the glass and all that stuff, and yeah, that took a few weeks to kind of track down the glass repair company and the facilities manager and all that. But that became a non-runner when I found out the glass would not be replaced. So then I had to get a plan B, which is basically it's a big vinyl, which is going to be professionally applied to the window. And it's really just to give that, for a fleeting moment, that you think, you know, oh God, is the glass smashed? And it's not sensational. It's not like a big like bullet hole went through the glass or anything. It's just like it got smacked with something in a kind of a vandal passing way. So it's just literally just gone, the whole thing is just shattered, but still standing as it would. So yeah.
There was a whole movement in painting in the like late 19th century of like painting a painting with the broken glass, like a kind of a, we'll probably butcher this term, but trompe-l'œil.
Oh yeah.
Broken glass that is super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about the use of the biro, and how is there like a limit to, like, do you use like a single pen and just like exhaust that pen to do one drawing, or is there like do you have like a framework that you use for how you make use of the biro? How many biros does it take to do one of these densely layered?
Yeah, it really varies because, you know, obviously some of the drawings don't have as much black in them, but I do have, you know, a bundle that thick of used biros. I haven't counted them, but certainly I'd say it's easily a few hundred biros. So it definitely take probably on average, I'd say 3 or 4 biros per drawing roughly.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's just if it needs more, that's great. I'll just get another biro. Yeah.
Right. It's not like you have a limit that you've set for yourself, or like this is a 1 biro drawing, or this is a 5 biro drawing.
No, it's actually I think it's really interesting that you asked that question, because the drawings are very uniform. They're all the same size. They're all mounted in the same way. So there is a very strict uniformity about them. And if there's at any point, if I make a mistake with the biro, I'll just tear up the drawing and start again. But that's interesting. So your question, I think, is very kind of like I don't know if insightful is that's not the right word, is it? It's very perceptive, because there is the uniformity with the drawings, but not quite clearly the level of the pen.
There's clearly structure to the way you approach these. You have like a very clear structure to the way, to your use of materials, to, you know, the way, like you've made a set of rules for yourself that you're following. So that's why I wondered if there was something about that in it. Can I just see, when you held that up, is it mounted? It's mounted.
It's just mounted, yeah. Mount board.
Okay.
Yeah, just to.
And like, but there's a kind of is it 3 layers of mount board?
No, it's really clever. I couldn't afford 3 layers of mount board, so by 29. So no, it's very clever. My framer actually cut the mount board. And again, I wasn't sure at the beginning, because I don't want decorative. I really want to avoid kind of decorative art. But it seemed to enhance the uniformity of the works when they were all together.
Okay. Yeah, it's like pulls them pulls them together, but then it also probably creates a structural integrity, which you need when you're creating something sculptural out of them, as you are.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about, I mean, I liked what you were saying about this kind of precariousness, that it's like, yeah, you're using this way of like assembling things in a way that is not secure at all.
Yeah, I know. Anna's probably going to freak out, but you know, it is really. Can you see that? It's just gonna like
Just sitting there.
Yeah. And then again, because I've come out of these drawings were done during the COVID period, so that I was trapped in a form of uniformity or confine, and that is reflected in that work. And now in this Q.E.D. exhibition, I feel like by me suggesting that window is broken, that's sort of breaking out, literally breaking out from this format. And it does tie in with the imagery because they're not comfortable images. I think they're attractive compositions, but I think the subject matter is not comfortable. And therefore that ties in with the smashed window. And again, that idea that you'd talked earlier about who is your audience. And I had to think about that because my audience, I'm not sure who my audience is, but I do want to reach out beyond the walls of, you know, the white space.
Right. So placing something on the window that's speaking out to people walking past is a way to,
yeah, people passing in buses and things.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. Great to hear more about that work. Will we move on to Bettina?
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm gonna screen share. Is there? This one. Share. Okay. Everybody seeing the presentation? Yeah. So, so this is details of what I'm presenting to the exhibition. Where I'm doing mostly tapestry. During the lockdown, I put my practice in videos, in performances, but then I came back to classic weavings. And as I'm really inspired by the relationship between technology and craftsmanship and how the two of those disciplines evolve in our era. So this is the tapestry in full, and this is details. So the tapestry, it originates from this this tapestry, which is a part of an ensemble called the Unicorn Lady. And this is a mille-fleur tapestry, mille-fiori. This is traditional 15th century tapestry. And so what I found interesting is that I took the message written on the little house, I don't know, the tent, and I wrote it with this alphabet, which is elite alphabet, and it's a language from the 1980s, from the very beginnings of the internet, that was used to write words as codes so that beginners could understand what the ones who knew would say. So here, like my inspiration for this tapestry. And I'm very influenced by cinema and philosophy, especially philosophies who promotes experience and the symbolism of evolutions through techniques and culture, the relationship between man and culture, and that really what inspires me. Thinkers like Gaston Bachelard or André Leroy-Gourand, Bernard Stiegler, on which I did my thesis, my master thesis. In cinema, I am really interested by 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is like a primordial movie for me. Like there is everything in this movie, and I'm particularly interested in the relationship between the monoliths and the human in this movie, which is kind of recurring, and the monoliths appears at some key moments in the movies, and like an obsession. And that's what we are. We are obsessive like beings, you know, like we can be obsessed by something, and then after it just disappears. That's what makes actualities news, you know. But what feeds into my practice is, above all, is the experience, like the idea of experiencing art or cinema. Like when you go to the cinema, you are in a black, you are conditioned to live an experience, and when you go to a gallery, you are also conditioned to see art. Like it's not it's not anodine. I don't know if you understand this word. Like it's not without consequences. Like so, that's why my audience is whoever wants to experience something, like whoever has like a tiny openings for poetry or art. Like that's kind of my goal. Is very simple, by making textile. Voilà. Sorry, I have other pictures to show you. So this is a tapestry I made in 2020 during lockdown, when I was in Dublin, and I found this unicorn garland in Tesco, and for me, they were like the epitome of evolution, of human evolution, because they are solar powered. And they were taking this subject that is the unicorn, that's highly symbolic since a long time ago, as you can see with the unicorn tapestry. So that's how I decided to include them in the sculpture. And then after I did this, like it was part of my research to mix the textile and the kind of electrics and technology. So this is research, actually. And there is this other tapestry in which I included the tree branches and lights in the tapestry. And that's when I started to weave my tapestry directly on the tree branches. This was when I was needed something very organic in my weaving, in my tapestry, like back to the basics, because I was so disconnected with weaving during the lockdown, and the tapestry were disconnected from their plasticity and organicity, since nobody could see them. They were always being shown on video and digital. So I wanted something that connects directly to the earth. And that at the time I was reading Gaston Bachelard. In English, the title is I don't know, The Earth and the Rest Reveries, and he was talking about that. like how everything is intricate and linked. And that's what I like also to work on, is the very, very tiny little details, but that connects everything. Like you know, in the tapestry, the small loop connects everything, like the threads are together. And I think that that's just it's a micro representation about what is happening in the big picture, you know, in the universe, in the world. Everything is connected. We were talking about that yesterday, the micro and the macro. So yeah, basically, and I will show you in avant-premiere my new tapestry. So this is only detail because it's part of an exhibition I'm preparing with Vanessa Jones. So this is still based on the unicorn tapestries. The one you are seeing is from the unicorn hunt, and this tapestry is in the United States actually. And so I took the subject of the unicorn being enclosed, and this single tree was really striking me for its presence. It was really like standing here just with the unicorn and the prison, and then only flowers, just like a small universe. And so I took the tree as a symbol, and then I weaved still in elite alphabet Daisy, which is the song that Space Odyssey computer sings when he's getting deactivated. And this is the part where he becomes kind of human, besides being killing people. Like, people feel mercy for him. And yeah, and the unicorn, I represented it as a very kawaii style, like a very childish, as the unicorn are today. But I wanted it to have a kind of a maleficent side with the eye, because in medieval time, the unicorn were dual. They could be pure, but they could be evil at the same time. So here it is.
Can you actually, I wanted you to go back to this one just to say, is it lit from behind, this work?
The one I'm presenting, this one? Yeah.
Yeah, does it have lighting in behind?
Yeah, there is lighting. So the lighting you see the bottom right is the lighting from the floor at the gallery. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea to have the red lighting behind. It's always this idea of you will find me obsessive, but this is the Space Odyssey computer, this eye that is observing us. But for me, it represents so many things. So and yeah, so, and the red light is kind of emergency red light. And since my work is a dialogue between dematerialization and loss of craftsmanship, it kind of, the light represent kind of either hope or either kind of despair or emergency.
I mean, I'm presuming, or I'm guessing that you have read Sadie Plant's book, Zeros and Ones.
Yeah.
I mean, that relationship between the digital and weaving, or the digital and textiles, is like very present here. Obviously, that's part of what you're working with, but I noticed it even materially in one of these close-ups. The first image that you showed, there's it's like a pixelated screen, or like a screen that's like breaking down a little bit.
Yeah, this is RGB. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely coming across, and it's super interesting. So generally you include like LED lights. There's often a light element in with the tapestry. And I think I understand what's happening there, but maybe could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
With including lights in the tapestries. Yeah, well, including lights in the tapestries is a way, like, there is a symbols in it, but also this is a way to not modernize, but to desacralize the tapestry, I guess, because big tapestries, they were suspending in castle, or like they were just the tapestry on the wall. And nowadays it's the same with the big old tapestry. They are in the dark because the color can disappear with the light, and people are trying to preserve it, like, fairly. So yeah, for me it's just I see my pieces as discussions, dialogues, or questions, even questions about practicing weaving and even art. So when I put a light, it can mean a lot of things, and even better, it can mean a lot of, like, many things for everybody. Like, I don't want people to be driven into one answer. You're mute.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very nice to hear, I think, about the way your work is like reaching into the past, reaching into this like a material history of tapestry making, and kind of reaching into a future, or even an imagined future, like a speculative fiction future, and like slipping between these times in a way. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing your practice.
Thanks.
I think we have Vanessa next.
Hello. Hi. Thanks, Sarah. It's actually a good segue because Bettina and I are collaborating on a body of work together, me as a painter and Bettina as a tapestry artist, but they're very related in the kind of central to our work is nature and craft. And you know that for me, in my work, my draw to the unicorn tapestries was the secular and the religious, and there is that same model in the technology and craft. So there was just a lot of similarities that we decided to collaborate on that. And symbols are all embedded in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll share the screen. I'm just going to bombard you with images. And
your image is the poster image for the exhibition, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll start with that one actually, and then
okay.
I'll go with how I led to that image, I guess. Excuse me. It's like now that I have to talk, I'm going to cough the entire time. I can never find where. There it is, presentation. Right, but there's my name, and there's the cover image, I guess, that you were talking about. And this is called art. Is it Archers or Bowmen? Bowmen. It started out as Archers, but then this came from a mural in Italy. It's a Gothic mural somewhere in Italy. I can't remember. I think somewhere in northern Italy. And a lot of my work comes from medieval and sort of primordial associations, mostly with the feminine, and that sort of duality between beauty and danger. So I always try to play with that And I ended up using my own image over and over again in the self-portrait. And it wasn't really, I mean, to go back to all the way back to Louis' talk, it didn't really have to do with self-portraiture, but then it did become important that it was a self-portrait. And it became important that it was the repetition of the same face over and over again, that you could sort of, I could disembody from a portrait. You could suddenly not see me because you're seeing me over and over again. Like a Botticelli angel is a sort of a generic angel over and over again, but it is modeled on somebody. So here's the source image for the archers. And there's actually a mirrored piece. So it's very frieze-like, and this horizontal advancement. I really liked that idea of movement like a frieze, say on the Parthenon, and that would classical sculpture and even archaic early classical architecture and sculpture has always been sort of in the periphery of my practice, even though it's not painting. It seems to really be in my work somehow without knowing it. I always kind of go back to Greek sculpture and early sort of medieval works like this. And the image on the right is my daily walk I was doing during lockdown. And it's the industrial estate wall. So it sort of separates Finglas, where I live, from the hive of industrial activity that's going on within the neighborhood as well. And it was really beautiful because, you know, as lockdown hit, spring had sprung. So all these beautiful light and shadows just on my daily walk, and I was able to record them. And they became part of my works, as you can see here. Yeah, and this piece speaks a lot about, again, repetition. But most directly of all of the images I did for my MFA, this definitely was one that really explored repetition and replication, and the legs over and over again. And I think as it's being installed, it plays really well with Martyna's work. You know, you have all these legs, yeah. And that's what I liked about this.
I literally just wrote that down.
Yeah. Well, I only noticed it yesterday. It's like, oh, this
yeah,
is a perfect piece to use. And Martyna and I actually shared a studio in the granary at NCAD. So there were these moments of like, oh, I'm using that pink too. You know, you take from each other and you don't realize you're taking from each other, you know? So to go back to kind of things that really inspire my work. It's funny, so, you know, early Greek sculpture was more about a masculine embodiment of the feminine. So everything that I kind of, I feel like my work always goes back to the feminine and the sort of idea of beauty. And today in our contemporary culture, we equate beauty with female, you know, so, but I'm more speaking about the feminine. And one of the most beautiful sculptures personally is the Critias boy for me, and the charioteer. And they're from slightly separate times, but both early classical and before. And there's just this moment where things, to go back to Bettina as well, things go from like this monolith to sort of a sigh towards the earth, you know, where it's like you have that contrapposto relaxation all of a sudden in sculpture, where it's more earthbound. And that's my sort of fascination with the feminine. It's this tie to earth. And that's why I love the Parthenon as well, is that it's one of the first pieces of architecture that they attempted to actually make it breathe. Instead of having these 90-degree angles, it's all slightly bulging. And so it's a living embodiment of what the sacred is. I like that visual representation of things that are familiar to represent something that is abstract. I mean, that's what painting essentially is. So I'm really trying to delve deep to all of my paintings representing something that isn't actually there, but is still real. These are more examples of feminine representations and sort of the duality within them, you know, the faceless fertility, and then the young mother who's not young, but she's represented as young, an embodiment of the Logos and Maree, and then the Artemis statue, which is a virgin goddess, but she represents fertility. So it's that duality and play of the good goddess, the bad goddess. And I like Jung and all of those things. So that it's fun to play with visually, you know, symbols again. So, and then, yeah, the fertility goddess in the middle is completely faceless. She isn't a person, she's a representation of something. And to bring back, so I use this image on the left over and over again. And so it's not representative of me, it's just a really convenient selfie image to use over and over again of myself. So I don't have to kind of rework things out. I can sort of just deal with the composition as opposed to, does that look like this person? And I had mentioned this before, I forgot I included this, but like, that's like the Botticelli angels. It's this sort of just representation of something in between worlds. So just, these are all paintings I did before the painting that is in the exhibition. And I just quickly go through them to show you how I kind of got to that point. Because of lockdown and just the idea of pandemic, there was plague, you know, immediately came to my mind, and I was already in sort of a medieval place in my head. So I went back to medieval, I looked at a lot of medieval representations of plague, and it actually just brought me to nature and the walled garden. So, and that's where obviously I went to the unicorn tapestries as well. But that connection to nature, where it's like 50% of, more than 50% of the population in Europe died during, you know, the bubonic plague. So their relationship to nature was very different. And I think you talked about this in your introduction. It's that cycle of life and death became in your face at that moment of lockdown. And I don't know if it's apparent in these, but that's what I was thinking about when I made these paintings. And I was listening to lots of, instead of reading, I was having to paint. So I was listening to lots of audiobooks. I was listening to Willa Cather, and just that European immigrant connection to the land, and just how that's represented and what it makes you think of. Those and the harvesters. I mean, Google arts and culture just to think about technology. You can zoom in on this more than the eye can zoom in on it. So I can actually see how Bruegel painted. You know, it's pretty amazing. So it's like, how am I going to do the hay, you know, the grain in the background? And I obviously didn't accomplish what he accomplished, but I was able to at least reference, you know, how he layered things. It was pretty amazing. And I've always loved this painting. So that's you know, the history, the Western history of art has always been very important to me. Yeah. And cinema. So this is a film still of Brigitte Bardot. And then on the right is from the Book of Hours of the Duc de Berry by the Limburg brothers. And again, it speaks to that connection to the cycle of nature and the seasons. And it's funny, I didn't know this. So I showed this to Bettina, and she goes, "That's my hometown. That's the castle in my hometown." So it's just perfect. It's like all of these sort of serendipitous moments began to happen. And she's French, like Brigitte, so there we go.
My initials are BB.
Yeah, so same initials as well. I thought I'd throw in there, I like to play with a sort of transpersonal connection between cultures. I really do think that there's something in being human that we go back to primordially, especially in regards to the female in nature or the feminine in nature. And so these paintings play with a bit more of an Eastern heritage that I have, that I was inspired by a film at the Venice Biennale in the Korean pavilion by Jane Jin Kaisen, where she plays with the land and the sea, and that maternal ancestral connection to the land and sea. And it was something that I felt immediately. I've never been to Korea, but it's something I feel more tied to because of my mother being from Korea than I would sort of anything else culturally within myself. And so those paintings sort of play on that. On the right is Jane Jin Kaisen's film, Community of Parting. And on the left is an actual Jeju, I'm mispronouncing that, I always do, diver. And yeah, they're these free diver females in Korea that I wanted to play with that sort of Botticelli of the sea connection between that prototypical idea of beauty from the sea in Western art, and integrate that with that same sort of the sea femininity and in Eastern, not Eastern art, but Eastern culture, as I know it. So there again is Poussin on the right and Botticelli on the left. These are more paintings that sort of, I think, integrate a Western art and Eastern ideas. Just to throw like the whole idea of the enclosed garden. The one on the left, the painting there on the left of my daughter and myself was done pre-lockdown. It was done before I started the course. And one thing I realized of being in lockdown is I did not want to be inside anymore. You know, there was this idea of being enclosed and isolated that the only way I could kind of get out was to literally paint myself outside. So all of the paintings, I didn't know I was doing that. It was just too familiar to be in the thing that you're in all the time. So it's just to juxtapose the two mother and child paintings there.
So you weren't doing like plein air painting, you weren't outside painting, but you painted yourself out, kind of.
Yeah. And just the whole idea of the garden, being able to play with symbols, and it's like, I don't want to literally hold my daughter, so I'm going to make her a cabbage. I mean, those ideas were just like these fun moments to have. That kind of, Bara talked about it, painting became kind of a something that you sought refuge in. It kind of let you get out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sort of so it's a Silk Road Buddha on the left and then Marie Antoinette on the right. These are images I've always had, and they were finally sort of able to find their way out in the series of paintings. And back to the unicorn tapestries. So that's what I'm working on now. And I think they really relate to the painting I am presenting in the exhibition. There's that medieval sort of sensibility of the bows and arrows, the arrows in aim, and nature and sort of that familiar wall of Finglas became really important to me. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and your talk about your practice, maybe more than so far, it's probably just things are accumulating over the course of this conversation, but I'm like seeing everybody's work.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing more connections, like even to like a self-portraiture that's not quite self-portraiture in Kitsch's work, or in this like profusion of legs, or in drawing from tapestries, or like the way that that like flat foliage with the hurricane fence behind, that is like, it's halfway between like just pattern and like a three-dimensional space that's being created.
Yeah, yes, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just the last thing I was going to say is in in the Bowman painting, there's something about the repeated figure that's a self-portrait, but not that becomes like a representation of time as well, because the figure is in these different positions, almost as if it's like a time lapse of movement somehow, and it becomes almost like a digital way of like showing movement, or there's something that is connecting now. For me, it's starting to connect a lot of different people's work. So
no, there's more digital in my work than I kind of give credit to, because it all kind of comes from, I mean, it's coming from my phone, so it and it really is that thing that Kitsch was talking about, that collaging of self onto the thing. I've just done it in a traditional material way, but it's come from a digital space, which is strange to think about. And so Louis spoke about that as well. You have just all of these images, that are just discardable, it's what you do with them. So in a way, I feel like that craftsmanship and skill sort of take them and make them permanent. That's the tapestry and the painting connection. You've literally turned them back into the earth.
Or like, I mean, even the way, when we take a selfie, we arrange our faces in a certain way that maybe doesn't always happen when somebody else takes a picture of you. You can't arrange your face the way that you want. But then there's something I think about the use of like a poor image, this term, whatever, like a cell phone selfie, and like producing that with like a fine art materiality that also, links into other works that, It's a
strange, I mean, a lot of things were not intentional. That's the great thing, I think, about getting your MFA. You're able to kind of delve into what you were doing, you have time to think about it. But using the same image, not just modeling myself over and over again. There's something of modeling the same image over and over again, and it's not the same image over and over again. So it's interesting things to think about.
Great, thank you so much. I'm conscious of time, so maybe we will move on to Lisa. Hi.
So I thought about, wait, I just share my screen. You see everything now? I thought I'd show you or present a project that I've been working on last year, and it's something that I think is representative or represents very well what I'm concerned with in my artworks, and what I'm thinking about and what I'm working with, and also what I'm inspired by. So to introduce it, so what you see now is it's a forum or an aula of a museum, and in the heart of it everything's like there's glass walls and windows, and then there's this plateau on which something can be installed. And we've been exhibiting in this museum as the sculpture class, because I'm coming from a sculptural background and I'm studying in Germany right now. And we've been given the chance to work something out for this place. And my group, we decided to put a glass sculpture in it, or a sculpture that is made out of a steel construction and broken car glass. And that's not really what I want to show, but it's it's the place or the setting for it. And then this exhibition, like a lot of people, like each of one of us was exhibiting in the place. And I came up with the idea of remixing the exhibition before it even really was being seen by anyone. And so I grouped up with some sound artists and another female artist from the class to do some sort of a performance in this hot room of the museum. And we remixed everything there, or some things that were inside the exhibition, and put it inside our performance. So the sound artists, they would get some sound pieces like voice overs that some other artists used inside the exhibition, and they would make something out of it. For example, they created some sounds out of it, and they had a modular system. This is this thing here. So they are working with this, and you see all the cables, and they just drop one to the other, and then they change the sound and the rhythm and the patterns. So this is what they do. And in doing so, they create some sort of an ambient sound that fills the room, and they experiment with this material. And what I and Sana were doing is we were projecting some visuals onto this glass sculpture in the background. And you could move through, like, this was in COVID, so nobody could walk into it. But it could have been seen and experienced if the museum would have been open. So, and all the visuals also referred to pieces and artworks that were inside the exhibition. But so, for example, some people worked with videos, and they gave me their material, and I would use pieces of them and put them together, and I would change the pictures so that they would fit onto this glass sculpture, and also change colors or something and create a certain rhythm in which they would move. Or other things we did were just walking through the museum and exhibition and just filming it and moving through it. And oh, I can show you the video actually. So. But I'll exclude the sounds. So, and the whole time it's these visuals are put onto the glass sculpture. So, for example, this refers to a work, but it's something that I just did as a reference to a work that was inside this exhibition. And so in this moment of this performance, it was broadcasted via YouTube and Facebook in the end, so that people could see it. But it was a one-time thing. It was only for this special exhibition, and it only took place once, and it won't ever happen again like this. So it's some sort of an audiovisual performance. So this is something that shows my worldview, I think, because what I'm working with is material idea in whichever form, like ideas or concepts and contexts. And maybe also it's a bit provocative to say I remix an exhibition, or we do. And we work together. We just do something in this 1 second, and we just form something, because the single parts come together, like the individual positions of these artists collaborating with me. It's their position, and they put something to a bigger picture, and something forms and unites. It's like a lab situation. It's a one-time experience, and we work together on something, each one on its own, while at the same time creating something that is united and that can be experienced and encountered in this very moment. And this is something that I love this idea behind it, because I think that I'm inspired a lot by the people that I'm working with, by my fellow artists. Like, I'm also in an artist collective here, and it's a very important place for me because it has nothing to do with uni. It's just a lot of musicians actually also, and then sculptors and painters and diverse disciplines. And we're coming together, and each day we see each other and talk about things, like talk about the world, talk about, maybe I even get some insights into how music is produced and how these people, like each one of us is just like also in this group from this very exhibition that we're talking about now. Everyone is putting something into this exhibition or just working for a vision each one of us has, and it's coming together inside this very exhibition. And that's something so unique. And then I mean, this is, I think I'm the last one to talk now, right? And I think it's just, it just shows, I think we've got the idea that everything could be like, have influenced one another. And it's like a weaving, everything is just coming together, and it suits, like, without, like, even with all this distance between us, like the places and the COVID thing and stuff like this. But this exhibition can be something like, it creates something like a pattern, or different visions come together and they formulate something that is going on right now in the world and in our minds. And yeah, just what is what we all are concerned with in our creative process. So I think my main subject, I'm a bit nervous now, I don't know, but my main subject with what I'm concerned with is this artistic practice and the process leading to creation, and how we create meaning, how we use language. And we are all defining our view of art and our worldview, and we think we define it now. And that's something I love, like that I also love to encounter and find out. It's a search and something that's going on right now. We just formulate our vision of what art can be like, and that's what I'm interested in.
Thank you for talking about this. I feel like this type of work requires quite a special, like, skill set. You must have a skill set that's around, like, relationships with people, building relationships, like negotiating, like speaking to people about their work and understanding their work, and creating some kind of a framework or a platform or a structure through which you can, like, mediate between these works. I think it's very interesting as a practice. Like, it sounds really, like, it's very complex, and it's very, there's like a lot of like emotional labor in that, I would have thought. And like, I mean, I'm not sure. It's like, well, because you're negotiating with people about their work, which is like it's in many cases it has a very complex relationship to the self, like the work that other people are making, and you're taking all of these works and, like, finding a way to, like, integrate them into a collaborative work. And I feel like it must be, I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about how that negotiation works, or how you do that.
I think it's just observation. I'm not, what is the word for it? But I'm more introverted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm more like quiet, but I love to observe, and I talk to people about their works, especially like when we're coming together at the same place or something, or we are like talking about things. It's just something that happens, or you see, and you, even if you're in a class with other people, then of course you see their development, and you're talking about what moves you. And this is like, I found out that especially for music and for art, I mean, music is an art form, or is art, and all the processes, they resemble one another, like all the struggles you're going through to give birth to something, or like this vision, because you have a vision of something that might not be like a mass aesthetic or something. It might be something that seems odd or off or lost or something, or you might even feel lost. And this is like this creative process. It's just human. And humans want to create something. And so whichever discipline you are working in, it seems to be just like the same process, or a familiar process. And this is something that unites everything. And also what unites everything, or everyone who is creating something, you always use a material or something that you are invested in and you are interested in, and you use this material and it's limited, and then you make something out of it on your own, like with your own creative thinking and stuff. So that's the same basis we all have. And then you talk, and then, yes, and then sometimes there are some possibilities, and you can just ask people, hey, do you want to do a performance? And do you want to show your individual position? Because it's individual positions that come together. And it's just, yeah, and then things just become independent, sort of the individual position, but they come then together. So it just happens.
I feel like that's a perfect place to end. Actually, you've rounded out something about like the experience of a group exhibition, like the one that you are all opening now. So yeah, I wanted to say thank you so much for the chance to hear more about your practices and to speak to you about them. It's been a real pleasure today. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.